guys, it's Landon Blake from Redefined Horizons, and in this video I'm going to show you how to shift from a measured coordinate reference system to a record coordinate reference system in Trimble Business Center. So we've got a little survey we did here a few days ago, and the survey was done with our real-time network, so it's in state plane, California state plane coordinates based on the real-time network. And we're tying into some legacy control, so we tied a couple legacy control points in the field with the RTN. And what we need to do now is we need to shift the data from our field survey, the measured data. We need to shift it or move it to the record coordinate reference system, so move it to the record control. So we're trying to reestablish this legacy control system. And so I'm gonna show you how to do that today in TBC. And this is a fairly simple shift. It's a 1-point shift. So I will mention that you have to be careful when you're doing this, because you can also have a rotation. So not just a translation, but a rotation that you need to do. So in this case, because we're dealing with two sets of GPS control, there is no rotation. So the rotation is very, very small. So we can ignore it. So we're just doing a shift. But there are times when you will also need to do a rotation of your data. And you can do that sometimes in TBC if you're dealing with total station data, because you can do that by manipulating the coordinates of your backsite on some of your setups. If you're dealing with GPS data, it's a little more difficult to achieve that rotation. So sometimes you have to do that in AutoCAD. You have to do the translation and rotation on AutoCAD. I try not to do that if I can help it, because once you move that data to AutoCAD, you lose some of your vector information, which we want to hang on to. But in this case, we don't have to worry about that, because we're just doing a 1-point shift. So I'm going to show you how to do that 1-point shift today. So I've got the data pulled up on the screen here. You can see our RTN base here at the bottom. And I've set up this spreadsheet with some notes on the CRS transformation. So at the top here, I have the legacy control point. This is 10,002. This is what we're trying to match. And then here's the shot from our field survey on that, the real-time network shot. Okay, it's 52,000. And this is the point that we're going to use to do the move. Now, I also pick one other point in our project. So this is a new control point we set in the survey. And I enter the measured coordinate for that from the survey. And then after we accomplish this translation, we'll plug in our calculated values on the record CRS for this point, and we'll make sure that we achieve this same shift, right? That's what we're trying to do. Okay. So I'm going to show you how to do this now. You're going to select your RTN base in TBC, left click to select it, and you're going to add a new coordinate. Okay, and we're going to apply this shift in the spreadsheet that you see here. We're going to apply this shift to our RTN coordinate. So I'm going to go ahead and add that. I'll leave it over here so you guys can see it. We're going to add that in. So our RTN base is called RTCM 3215. Okay, and let's copy the northing and easting. And we'll copy the elevation as well. Okay, and what we want to do now is we want to apply that shift or translation. I like to call it transformation. So I'm going to copy those values down, and we're going to paste the values. Now you want to make sure when you do that, when you calculate these values, that you get the sign right, because you can screw up the sign. Okay, so I know that I want to get from this northing to this northing, which is what I want. I need to come down 98 hundredths. That's why I've got the negative sign there. And to get from this easting to this easting, I need to increase by half a foot. That's why this is a positive value. Okay, so now that that's done, we can just add a new formula here and say add this plus this. Okay, and we'll do the same thing here. Okay, and then we also have the elevation we need to adjust. So let's add the formula there to calculate that shift. That's a pretty big shift, 64 feet. Okay, so then I'm going to just copy this, paste the value here. Okay, and we'll say equals this elevation plus the shift. Okay, so here's the new values for the RTN base to put us on the legacy control system. So I'm going to paste these values into this new coordinate we're adding for that in the TBC project. So in essence here, what we're doing is we're moving our RTN base to move all the points in our project. Okay. Now this is really important. You got to set this to control quality or this won't work. So we're going to do that. We're going to hit OK. I'm going to come back to this point in the properties dialog, and I'm going to grab this coordinate that came out of the data collector, and you can see that because it's got the name of the data collector file in brackets. I'm going to select that. I'm going to right click in the blank space here in the map view, and I'm going to say delete. Okay, so now if you grab this, the only coordinate value associated with this point is the one we hand entered, our office entered is what TBC calls it. And you can see now this symbol has changed to a control point symbol. Okay, the next thing we do is we hit this recompute. That's going to move the data. Okay, now we want to go in and we want to check the coordinate of this 10,101 to see if we get a different value here and if the shift matches. So let's do that. So I'm going to zoom in. Then we'll right click on that checkpoint and we'll center. Okay, so here it is. Okay, so we're going to paste this northing and easting into our spreadsheet and our elevation, and we're going to calculate that shift and see if we get the right numbers. So let me pull the spreadsheet over so you can see that math. So now we're just going to say equals this minus this, and equals this minus this, and equals this minus this. All right, so it looks like the elevation worked, but we had some problem with the shift of our, it's definitely with our northing. So I didn't get a shift on the northing. I was looking for a shift of a foot. So let me pause the video and I'll go poke around and see if I can figure out what happened. All right, guys, let me tell you what I had to do to get this to work. Let me show you the spreadsheet first. So I went ahead and plugged in the calculated coordinates now for 10,101 after that shift. And you can see my values are matching up. Okay, but to get that to work, what I had to do is I had to go back on this RTN base point. You can't delete this. You can't delete the... So you do add the coordinate like I showed you and plug in your state plane values, okay? But you can't delete that data collector value because it won't change. It won't change the elevation if you do that. So what you have to do is that shift that we have for the vertical here, the 6461, you actually have to apply that to the ellipsoid height on this other value for the lat long height value for your point. And so you can see I did that. I went ahead and changed that. And then once you do that and recompute, it'll change the elevations. So you add the state plane point, northing easting elevation, that'll change your horizontal. You edit the lat long height point that comes in with the data collector for this point. You edit that ellipsoid height to get the right elevation. So now when I click on 10,101, those values match at the checkpoint here, 10,101. Okay. So what we've done now in essence is we've shifted all these points now to the new coordinate system, all the points that are tied to that RTN base. Now that's important. If you have other points in here that are from a different RTN base or from a total station survey, for example, If there's no link between the point and that RTN base that we moved, they won't shift. Okay, so for example, I have these freestanding points here. These didn't move because they're not tied by a vector to that RTN base. Okay, so that's important. All right, so I've moved my data now, and I will point out, well, a couple things I want to mention. Be very, very careful when you're doing this. It's easy to mess things up. And we've got a lot of check shots here. So we shot some sidewalk and some other hardscape. So before we go out and use any of this new data, so I'm gonna go ahead and export. I've got these control points here. I'll select. This is new control we set. Now I have legacy control values on those control points. But before we use these in the field, we'll go out, we'll set up on those values, and we'll check some of this hardscape and make sure that we're landing in the right spot. Okay. You could get somewhat an idea. Well, the best thing to do is to just check it on the ground. So that's what we'll do in this case. Okay. So the last step here that I'm going to execute is I'll select those control points. So these are my new control points with the legacy control values now. And I'll export those. I'm going to make sure I get the right date on there. So today is the 29th of March. And I'm going to call this control. And we'll export those. Okay. Now this is another very important thing you want to do. After this is finished, you want to save this TBC project. So I'm going to call it Working Transformed, because we've moved it now. Okay, and then we want to go in and archive that original TBC project because we don't want anybody else getting into that now. That's on the measured coordinate system that we're no longer using. So I'm going to grab the folder and the VCE file. I'm going to cut those and I'm going to archive them. So I'll make a new folder with today's date for the archive. And we'll drop those in here so nobody can get to them. Well, you can still get to them, but they're not where people would expect to find them. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I appreciate it.